Welcome to Williston. So, good to see so many faces here. It seems like there have been several that we haven't seen in a while, and they're here today. Yeah, look at you. So we have an exciting meeting today. We have a visitor, Sarah Tischler. So thank you for visiting us. And then we have 3 speakers who will be introduced soon. And we are going to kick it off with a Rotary Minute from Terry.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Today is World Polio Day and also United Nations Day. We've heard about the outstanding work that's been done by Rotary on both of these issues. And I refer you to this month's edition of Rotary Magazine and Stephanie Ersich's President's Message for more on World Polio Day. Rather than take the low-hanging fruit, I'll talk about an article in the August edition of Rotary Magazine. It was about the need for organ donors. There's an immense need for kidneys. And many of us have listed our desire to donate our organs when we pass away. We have put this on our driver's license or on our advance directives. Let's take a little or effort on our parts and a little courage, because to donate, we won't be allowed to worry about it. The article was about 2 people who didn't know each other and met by chance. One of them said that she needed a kidney transplant. The other said she had considered for a long time being a donor. She decided to see if she was a match for this individual, and she was.
You do this each time.
She had the courage to provide
I
life.
did have words in my purse.
Living organ donors are in great demand, not only for kidneys, but also for livers. Imagine the courage it takes to be a living donor. There's always a danger that later on in life, you may need a transplant yourself after donating. My old college dictionary defines courage as mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. I always like to inject a little relevant humor to wrap up my comments. So here's a short poem that I probably would like to sing, but I don't think I'd probably start doing it. Yeah. The liquor was spilled on the barroom floor, and the bar was closed for the night, when a little gray mouse crept out of his hole and sat in the pale moonlight. He lapped up the liquor from the barroom floor, and back on his haunches he sat. And all night long you could hear him roar, "Bring on the goddamn cat."
Thank you, Terry. All right, are you introducing our speakers? Okay, then I'm gonna invite Sally up to introduce our speakers today.
Live kidney donor. So my speakers today, I'm gonna put my glasses on so I can read this. My speakers today are from the Developmental Disability Housing Initiative, which I hadn't heard of until I met Jen and talked with her. A very brief explanation is Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative, DDHI, which is easier to say than all those 4 words. As a grassroots parent-led advocacy group statewide for permanent service-supported housing for our adult children with intellectual developmental disabilities with higher support needs. So I'm going to read bios for our 3 guests in the order of appearance. First is going to be Beth Wilson. Beth and her husband Jeff have lived in Williston since 1993. Their son Jackson was born in 2001. Jackson attended Williston schools and graduated from CVU. He is on the autism spectrum with ADHD and an anxiety disorder. At 23, he lives with his parents, as living on his own is not something he can do at this point. Jackson recently completed a seasonal job in Williston for 8 hours a week, which he fully enjoyed and does require a support person with him to stay on task. Beth, in her professional capacity as a certified financial planner, has worked with special needs families and sees the many struggles and obstacles these families face. She has been a member of the the DDHI since 2021, is a member of the Williston Parent Group, and has served on the board of Vermont Family Network. Okay, I hope you're taking notes, because here's the next one. Jenn Townley will speak next. Jenn and her husband Ed have lived in Williston since 1993, along with their two sons, Bennett and Noah. Their 26-year-old son, Bennett, is on the autism spectrum with clinical complexities and other diagnoses, and currently lives at home with his parents. Jenn has been a member of the DDHI initiative since 2021 and served as co-leader on several committees. She facilitates the Williston Parent Group, comprised of 21 families seeking stable, service-supported peer residential housing for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities with moderate to high support needs who desire to live in Williston. She's a member of the Act 186 Pilot Planning Grant awarded to the Champlain Housing Trust and a new family representative on the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. Third is Marla McQuiston. Marla and her husband Tim have lived in Williston since 1994 with their three sons, Hunter, Connor, and Justin. Their 26-year-old son, Justin, has Down syndrome and attended the Williston Community Schools and CBU and is well known in the community. Marla has been a member of the Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative since its inception, serving as a co-leader on a variety of committees. She serves on Williston's Affordable Housing Committee, is a member of the Williston Parent Group, and the Act 186 Pilot Planning Grant awarded to the Champlain Housing Trust that will share their final report later this month. So I introduce these three women from DDHI.
Thank you. Good morning. Like you heard, I've been in Williston since 1993, and it was so nice, and I see some familiar faces, so that's really nice. Thank you for having us today. Our goal is really to help you understand who we are, what our desires are for our children, and how we can facilitate that process. And I'm glad to use DDHI instead of all the words. The state estimates there's about 600 of these adults. I'm going to call them kids because even though they're adults, we think of them as kids. Lack housing that meet their needs. Pretty high number for small state of Vermont. So I'd like to share with you what these families look like and their needs. So the kids. So consider it's 20 plus. The majority are living at home with their parents or siblings. Here's a picture of their needs and why they are not living independently. Their support ranges from essential guidance and reminders, 24/7 coverage and supervision. Medically, take the correct medicines at the correct times, feeding, diapering, showering, personal hygiene, make medical appointments, the transportation, and what to do after the appointment, because the physician's going to tell you to do some things. Sometimes it's not always what we want. But how are they going to execute that? How are they going to do and adapt to what is needed for their medical care? Their daily activities need help. So making their own meals may not be possible, or their meals become very limited or very easy. The meals, are the meals healthy? Are they appropriate to address their specific needs? Grocery shopping. Driving, oh my. Many do not drive and will never drive. So transportation is a huge obstacle for these families. Decision-making, appropriate decision-making, money management, executive function. Socially, there's loneliness, isolation, how and where to meet and make connections with others. I could list all aspects of these kids' lives and wants, but time would never allow. I summarize this section with, oh, you have a wheelchair. So you just need a ramp and an elevator. Not. That doesn't even come close to what these needs are. So let's talk about their parents.
us. We have become knowledgeable about our kids' diagnoses and what these diagnoses will look like in the future. How to medically manage them, how to work through the school system, how to understand and advocate for our kids' benefits such as Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, state, federal government, and agencies like the Howard Center. Many families have broken down. The divorce rate for families with special needs children is 50% higher. These single, married, widowed parents have been the knowledge base and advocates for the children, some for decades. Many parents have not been able to work or work full-time as they are full-time support caregivers. Many parents have other children. How do they balance their time? Many of the parents have needed to become their kids' guardians once they turn 18. So they can speak with medical providers, manage state, federal benefits, make hard decisions, to name a few. Although there are financial supports for these kids, it does not come close to the needs, and hence the family resources are often strained. The parents have concerns about their retirement, enough money to leave all their children to help them through their lives. This brings me to the maze of financial planning for a family. Attorneys assist parents through documents and approaches these families can utilize, such as special needs trust, wills, parent trusts. There are savings accounts that can be utilized, such as stable account. The parents may or may not know of these as they relate to their kids, or do not have the time and capacity to address these important issues. Friends and family can be helpful, but the fear we live with daily, what happens to our kids when we die? Who will play our role? Where will our kids' support be? Where will they live safely? Jenn will now share with you the work we've done and where we are in providing safe and supportive housing practice.
Thanks, Beth. And I'm just passing around some pictures of my son so you get a sense of who he is. Since DDHI grassroots founding in the fall of 2021, DDHI has successfully advocated for the development of housing options beyond the shared living provider, often referred to as adult foster care, which is the primary housing option available to our kids in Vermont. In shared living, adults with disability moves into the shared living provider's home. Although it is a model that works for some adults, oftentimes it ends up with the adult with a disability having to change homes multiple times, sometimes rather frequently, often outside of their community and their peer group. And it can also be an unstable situation for adults without families. DDHI parent members are committed to providing our lifelong vulnerable adult children, many who are limited in their ability to express themselves and protect themselves, with a stable place to live and friends to live with long after we, their parents, are gone. My 26-year-old son, Bennett, testified this past year that he wants choices about where he lives, with whom he lives, and how he wants to live. He desires to live with his friends with a varying range of support needs, because they're all like snowflakes, in the community where he grew up and where the community knows him. He is an age where he wants to have a place to call home that is not his parents' home or a group home, and desires to experience the same freedoms other people his age do, but with support and a safety net. During the last 3 years, DDHI has been actively advocating at many levels to bring permanent, stable, service-supported housing options for adults with IDD and with significant needs to fruition. The need to bring housing with services instead of being in their own silo has been quite an interesting journey, and has been more difficult than we would have expected. And it has taught us and taken us down paths that we've had to learn a lot of different ways to bring this all together. This type of housing will require changes at the state at many levels, but it also requires advocacy at the local level in developing affordable units. In Williston, we have had conversations with town planning and zoning staff the town manager, the planning commission, and the select board, in addition to meeting with our local legislators. And we are deeply grateful for the support they have shown us, and would also add that DDHI parents in Richmond have done some of the same with their local reps and town officials. The Williston Parent Group, which, as we mentioned, has about 20 families in it, has also begun reaching out to local developers to see what is coming down the pipeline. DDHI parents statewide have provided testimony to several key committees in both the Vermont House and Senate, and written many letters as constituents advocating for housing choice and being a voice for our adult sons and daughters. Parents have also met with our federal legislators and their staff. We have worked collaboratively with the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council staff and have continued to build relationships with housing trusts and housing authorities across the state, key housing-related state agencies and departments, and personnel within the Agency of Human Services. In our legislative session in 2021-22, after first being formed, Act 186 was passed, which funded 3 pilot planning grants for development of additional residential service options across the state, which Marla will share more specifics on. In addition, a position was created for a residential program developer to expand housing options for individuals with developmental disabilities. In the 2022 and 2023 legislative session, our advocacy in partnership with the Vermont Care Partners resulted in a 5% base increase in Medicaid wages for developmental services to help close the gap on the staffing crisis for direct support professionals. This past session, the inclusion of language establishing individuals eligible for the Medicaid home and community-based services waiver, which our children all are, will now be a priority for funding through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board and the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. These were both key additions. And I'll note that this includes more than just people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, because there are many, which I think is a great thing to see. So in January of this past year, the 3 Act 186 pilot planning grants were announced. And I'll now pass it over to Marla to share more details on those and what lies ahead for DDHI.
Hi. I'm Marla McQuiston. You've probably seen my son Justin around. I'm passing around a picture. He decided to lead the 4th of July parade in Williston about 6-7 years ago. Just walked down the front of the parade. He's kind of a big personality in Williston and CVU towns. He doesn't want to live in Essex or Richmond, sorry. They're great towns, but he's recognized in Williston. He's greeted, everywhere you go with them. So as we mentioned, he and his peers can't really afford to live in Williston. I'm sure many of you have young adults who also can't afford it. Presently on the Affordable Housing Committee, and we're really trying hard to find ways to bring affordable housing to Williston. Our group is working on creating housing for these young adults. We're looking for grouped apartments. We're looking for maybe a few homes clustered in a neighborhood. A lot of creative choices. The 3 planning grants that were awarded that Jen was talking about, they're for all different types of housing. The grant in Burlington is being planned by Champlain Housing Trust for a property that they already own. They'll renovate it into a small apartment building for 10 individuals. It will have a communal kitchen, living and dining area, because some of the people that live there will need still feeding and 24/7 support. The grant plan by Down Street in Montpelier has 2 projects. The one is going to be 4 apartments in a large apartment building in Waterbury. And they're renovating a farmhouse in Randolph, which was donated by a family. Be renovated for 2 people and possibly 4 in the future. And the 3rd grant is in Moncton. It's planned by a group of parents who formed a 501c3. And they're renovating 1 house for 4 residents with personal funds and will build 3 more houses on the property once they raise more funds. However, many families in Vermont don't have the personal funds, as Beth mentioned. They've had to quit jobs or quit working to stay home and take care of their young adults. So those families are, functioning at a lower income level and can't really afford to be building a property. We're looking for the state to chip in funds, and as Jenn mentioned, there's been 2 programs where the state is going to be setting people with developmental disabilities as a priority in the funding for housing. Most families are also kind of carrying this extra silent tax burden of the cost of caring for for their family members. The state isn't paying a livable wage for most people with care personnel. We're also asking then for increasing the benefits and the pay for staff to a livable rate so that there are direct service personnel to care for the family members, and particularly for those that need 24/7 supports. The state put money into childcare in the last few years, and finally there's new childcare centers opening. So the state needs to put money into housing individuals with developmental disabilities. There are, a promise was made years ago when they closed the institutions that that's what they would do. They would continue to take care of these people. And these people as in my kid and all the rest of them. So they're still leaving this job primarily to parents, and we're trying to push that they will step up and take care of people. So thank you for listening. We appreciate your questions, and we're always looking for donations of land for building. You could request to do that. And you can only. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is an issue that I've followed a lot in the legislature, and I know how hard you mentioned the decision made in the legislature to close Brandon and other places. And that was in the early 80s, and you were promised, those parents at the time were promised more help. And here we are, this many years later, with now, there are a couple of people in the legislature, and our local people have been fine, but a couple of people there that a long time. Topper McCann probably ran into a huge advocate on it, but you just need to push and push and push and push. And I really admire and respect the work you're doing, because it's a big, big problem.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I would say we have several champions within the legislature today,
You do.
and they've been working with us and supporting us.
And it can come, but it takes time. It's
Exactly.
constant, and you really almost have to have somebody there every day. That's hard to do.
Well, this year, for the first time, we're going to try to have somebody there once a week, because we still have to care for our children, and we don't have the supports that are part, because of the staffing crisis. So a lot more is falling on families today, but we're doing our best.
Yeah,
And,
you really are.
I would agree with you. And
So, thank you for coming here and making us aware of this, and it makes sense. We have assisted living and independent living for seniors. That's something these people also, and it would also, the side benefit would be socially, it would help to
Yeah, that's
help their lives.
another thing that has to be changed, because the state has a regulation that only 2 people with disabilities can be living in under a roof. So you can't, who knows what. It doesn't follow with.
They don't do that with seniors.
Right.
Or with regular people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It
they
makes
don't
no
do that with
sense.
Right.
So
Because you have assisted
anybody
living
aware
and you
of
have people in
the
memory
restriction
care
or
units.
lack thereof?
Makes no sense.
I think it was another
What was the
thing.
question, Leslie?
what did you say?
So repeat the question.
What was your question, Leslie?
Oh, I just said, I'm sure that they don't hold that true for families, no more than one. person with disabilities? And also, what was the wisdom behind this, or lack thereof?
It wasn't wisdom.
Yeah, I think it was probably coming out of Brandon. They wanted to make sure that people weren't creating. Most other states put together group homes.
Mhm.
Vermont is very proud of the fact that they did not do group homes. They actually closed the group homes that were here and then had this regulation that it can only be 2 people. So now, you know, our kids grew up together. They would be happy living with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6
Mhm.
and being able to share and support each other and live in their community. They don't want to be off in some place outside of the community, but.
Yeah.
We have a question.
Can I just add
Are
one
there-
more comment and then I'll take a
Are
question?
there any countries in the world that are considered excellent at handling this kind of situation? And, you know, are we using any of that information to design what it would look like in Vermont?
Mhm.
And kind of like, what would you like to see for a design model?
There aren't, we haven't really seen any, but we haven't really looked into them because we are limited by coming under federal Medicaid laws. So it doesn't help a lot to look out of the country, but we have looked at other states and there's a lot in other states.
And I think there's some research from other countries that shows that people living together.
Yeah.
And
Do
sharing
better.
staff, there's a lot of benefits to it. So we have read that. The other thing I just wanted to comment on earlier is, you know, Vermont has been very supportive of inclusion. So
Mhm.
within the school system, it's all been about inclusion, inclusion, inclusion. And when they then hit adult services, and then granted, we came through a pandemic shortly after my child transitioned into adult services, it's a very different model. And it's a bit of a cliff, I'm gonna tell you, if you hear the families talk about, they don't have that connection that they had. They're not out in the community as much as they want to be. And I know there's a staffing crisis, and there's a whole lot of other things, but I think it's a real adjustment. And I think we as Vermonters can do better.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah, my question's pretty much, and, no. I'm still frustrated, but I'm done. This topic just, it burns me. I mean, if you were to just say you had 5 of your kids, like, all in under one roof, and you just did it, you know, that means you're gonna stop getting funding from
So
the
you-
state and from the federal government.
Mhm.
Correct. You could do it, but then you have to get licensed. So that brings in a whole nother level of cost. You have to have licensed as if you were an assisted living. So that's their level of licensing is for an
Mhm.
assisted living facility. And they don't have anything between that and a single.
And is that the Moncton model that's about to come in with the 2 or 3 different houses?
So they are licensed.
Yeah.
They're gonna have 2 or 3 different houses. Yeah,
With private money?
with.
Mhm.
The place on Williston Road, near where Chapel's Florist is, there's apartments.
Yeah, that's for people with disabilities, so comes under the same thing, basically. These are people with developmental disabilities. But that was started by Cathedral Square, and it is,
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing we would like to find, or something maybe with slightly modified, because many of our families aren't able to maintain their own apartment by any means.
Or
Mhm.
like a motel. Like, so you have a bunch of rooms.
Right.
That could be apartments.
Yeah, and I don't think that is 24/7 either. That specific location, but it has worked. And,
Mhm.
there's the things to take from that, but.
Yeah. So, what do you need from us? Not that
Land.
necessarily.
Building connections.
Voting for, people that will support this.
Mhm.
We are advocating in the legislature. We've had a lot of support in the legislature. But, you know, there was a big housing bill that went through last year, through the House. put forward by, Champlain Housing Trust, I think Chris Donald came to talk to you about it. And that would have helped with some of our housing. But Agency of Human Services needs to be willing to do something, and they've been pretty silent.
We have a question on the board.
Yeah.
Jude?
Yes, you said that you have been talking with developers, and there are a lot of developments that are on the books coming up. Have they been receptive to you? I mean, they've been trying to put together things that are affordable housing, supposedly, just generically. And they're looking at things that also allow a place for people to socialize and get together that are part of their developments. So I'm just wondering what response you've gotten from them.
Yeah, I would say, we've had some conversations, we've had some positive response. It's just not in a place yet that hasn't started yet, I guess is what I'm gonna say. We talked with another one that had a piece of property that might be available, but, our kids will not drive. Therefore, really need to be near public transportation, which no longer comes to the town, the historic section of town. And, would like to be in a walkable community. So they're thinking closer to maybe Taft's Corners, but not too far away. I think the other thing to remember here is we also have to marry these service agencies with the housing, working together, how that would all work, what's gonna be required, is gonna be a memorandum of understanding. So, and I know, I would say that, yes, we've had support. I think there's one developer we haven't heard back from yet, that has a major piece of development within, Williston, and another one is, he's like years away from it coming to fruition. But, so yeah, we're just getting into that, and, we'll continue to advocate. Or if we find that there's land nearby, can we find someone, I know Champlain Housing Trust has said, we'll try to work with you guys. So, it's just a lot of moving parts, but yes, I would say that we have had some support from developers. Okay.
So, so first of all, let's thank these people. So,
Gratitude.
yeah, recognition
Recognition.
of your coming to us, we will be making a donation to the mentoring program at Wilson Central School. And there's a card for each of you from the mentor kids. And then the last thing I have to ask you to do, I'll ask Jen to do it just because she started it. It's her fault. Please pick a ticket and read the last 3 numbers on the ticket.
503.
Susan, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, lady.
I really look forward to hearing about your progress and keep us updated on how we can be helpful. Thanks for being here. Erin, would you like to come do an inspiration?
I haven't actually read the book Full Catastrophe Living. I don't know if any of you have. I think it was written in the 70s or 80s. I'm not quite sure, but I have a bad habit of looking at the back of a book when I get it and reading the last couple pages before I start. Usually to see if there's some kind of treasure back there. There usually is, just saying. And there was a poem that I found at the back of this book that I still haven't read, but it's about mindfulness. It's called Keeping Quiet by a poet named Pablo Neruda. I'm not sure if that pronunciation is correct, so I apologize if it's not. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go.
Always nice to start the morning with poetry. Okay, a few things. So I had a request from the town about providing hot chocolate for the tree lighting. We've done that in the past. I think Leslie may have taken charge of that. It's December 8th from 4:30 to 5:30. Is that something that we want to do?
Of course. I had already agreed to.
Okay,
It's so much fun. The kids love it.
all right. So we'll do some hot chocolate. We'll coordinate that. Also, speaking of Leslie, she really needs a replacement for the chairperson for the Public Relations Committee. Who's gonna do it? Come on, we've been asking for months.
I'm almost ready to bribe. It's a wonderful committee filled with dedicated, loving, compassionate, intelligent Rotarians. So. Come on.
Marla.
Don't be shy.
Maybe Leslie, you could write up a little note about what exactly the responsibilities are. Just so
I would be very glad.
so your candidate can have a good idea of what they're getting themselves into, because I don't think it's a ton of work.
Oh.
And there are already people on the
Does all
committee
the
that could do
work.
this. So you can do that. I will include it in things.
I think I just saw Howard raise his hand.
Other things, so the trunk or treat is Sunday from 2:30 to 4. I'm thinking we should get there by 2 to set up. I know I talked with Sarah from the Bookmobile. She's planning to be there by 2. And I'm excited to see everyone. If it's nice out, Elena and I are gonna play music. for it.
great.
So, live music, trunk or treat, don't miss it. And then Armin.
Yes, thank you. I was gonna mention the trunk or treat also. And it's a lot of fun. If you're not coming with a trunk, feel free to dress up and come and join us anyways. There are plenty of trunks and we have plenty of candy. So come and have some fun. The kids make it wonderful. Anyways, I'm here to talk about the Memorial Day, the Veterans Day observation. Let me start over again.
Observance.
Observance. I still need a few people. I've got some vacancies. I sent emails and haven't gotten responses from everyone, so I'm gonna start making phone calls if I don't get enough people here. So if anyone can help, we're looking for someone maybe to read a closing statement, someone to read the history of Veterans Day. You'll have a script that you can amend if you wish. It's nothing written in stone. And I'm hoping to get Luke Bueller to come and play taps for us. Rick's gonna ring the bell and get the podium. He might need help getting the podium and especially the podium across the street from the brick church. So if someone can help him do that, Leslie and I will be out of town. And the last thing was coffee. Are we interested in providing coffee like we did for Memorial Day? Or should we just scratch that?
Well, if it's cold, it's nice to have it.
But we need someone that wants to head that up and do it, you know, so.
What's the date, Armand?
It's the 11th, November 11th,
November 11th,
What day of the week is that?
Monday,
Monday.
At what time?
9 in the morning.
Okay, I'll do the coffee.
Thank you. Anyone, can anyone help her?
I'll do it.
That's okay, thank you. And next, I didn't tell Elizabeth yet, next, the Boy Scouts will be presenting the colors and leading the Pledge of Allegiance.
Nice.
And Mo Dennis, who is the scout leader, wants to come next week at the meeting to talk to us about how we can work with them and they can work with us on community projects. I thought the bulb planting would have been a good opportunity, but I'm sure there's more also. And Mo is from Richmond, and we have no Rotarians from Richmond, so I have my eye on him and hope to meet some of his acquaintances from Richmond and see what happens.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Armin. Chris,
Oh, wait a second. Did you want an update on the speech contest or not?
I don't think we need one.
Okay.
I mean, you can email me stuff and I can include it in that.
Okay,
Good.
no problem.
Okay. All right.